Chinese submarines have conducted lengthy trips into the Indian Ocean, near the Maldives, Seychelles, Sri Lanka, and Mauritius. China has also developed plans for seaports and power plants on several of the islands as part of the Maritime Silk Road project. New Delhi has eased foreign investment limits in Indian defense firms and plans to construct 4 warships in Mumbai and 3 in Kolkata, along with 6 nuclear-powered submarines as part of a multi-billion-dollar effort to upgrade its military. India is sending a 1,300-ton patrol vessel to Mauritius on March 12th and plans to send another 13 vessels within the next year. India will fit the island nations with surveillance radars and ocean mapping capabilities. As part of an effort to expand India's sphere of influence into Southeast Asia, New Delhi also has plans to send 2 patrol vessels to Sri Lanka, 2 frigates to the Philippines, and 10 patrol vessels to Vietnam.
During the Indo-Pak conflict at Kargil in 1999, China stayed neutral. This neutrality seems history. A Chinese energy corridor intended to run from Gwadar on the Arabian Sea in Pakistan to western China, cutting through the disputed northern areas of occupied Kashmir, is said to be the game changer.
Tomorrow, let us say, there is a conflict between India and Pakistan. Quite obviously, operations would be launched into POK, could be launched into Gilgit, could be launched into Pakistani Punjab, Sindh, right down to the desert. I mean, all these areas could get activated. Then would China perceive it as a threat to its, to its artery? Would China then intervene?
The Gwadar POK Xinjiang energy corridor is part of Beijing's Malacca bypass strategy aimed at reducing China's dependence on the vulnerable oil supply route traversing the choke point at the Malacca Straits in the Indian Ocean. China has a history of going to war to protect strategic corridors, such as the Tibet-Xinjiang Road through Aksai Chin in 1962. The Gwadar-Xinjiang corridor is even more strategic. And for India, the presence of Chinese troops in Gilgit-Baltistan is a signal of an open Sino-Pak collusion on Kashmir.
This implies that I agree that it is Pakistan's, which is a very, very serious statement to make, which is a very serious policy position to take.
In stapling visas of residents of Indian Jammu and Kashmir and refusing to host the Indian Army commander of that state, Beijing is giving more signals of cementing the Sino-Pak axis over Kashmir. It's not just an energy corridor, but also a trade route, a new Silk Route that China seeks through Pakistan and Gilgit-Baltistan. This would be central to its agenda to seek bigger markets and influence around India's periphery. Increased presence of the Chinese in its backyard could pressure India into a military build-up.
6 divisions have been sanctioned. Our people welcome this. This should have been done much more.
Stuck at the Prime Minister's office, the proposal for the raising of mountain strike corps to deter China could finally become a reality.
Lessons learned from the whiplashing of the 1962 war. This time, India is taking on the present troop build-up on the China side with similar steps of its own. 50,000 troops will be put in place on the Chinese frontier. Local militias, scouts from Arunachal and Sikkim will play a key role. The Arunachal and Sikkim scouts will provide both border guards and covert forces in areas either disputed or threatened by China. It will be India's first mountain strike corps, giving the country the ability to invade mountainous territory. An artillery division is also in the works to give fire support to this offensive formation. 2 mountain divisions, number 56 and 71, which will be part of this corps, are already being raised. India shares a disputed 1,540-kilometer boundary with China in Arunachal and a 222-kilometer frontier in Sikkim. China claims all of Arunachal is theirs. Here's how the two sides match up in terms of military capability. China has 8 divisions deployed along the 45,000-kilometer frontier against India's 6. The Chinese also have better access to military infrastructure, enabling rapid troop induction. Rapid militarization of Tibet makes India even more vulnerable. To face the threat, India has brought back the 27 and 57 mountain divisions from J&K to raise current troop levels to more than 100,000. The IAF has deployed Sukhoi 30 fighters and upgraded air bases. With India now actively taking on the Chinese posturing, there's every indication of the Eastern theatre coming alive again. With Vishal Thaper in New Delhi, Rishabh Gulati, NewsX.
Our two main irritants are Pakistan and China, says Army Chief General V.K. Singh. China and Pakistan continue to remain two major irritants to the India's national security, Army Chief General V.K. Singh said today in New Delhi. While addressing a seminar organized by Centre for Land Warfare Studies, an army-sponsored think tank, he said the internal condition in Pakistan and its association with some of the militant groups does impact India, and therefore it is of great concern to the Indian Army as well.
We also have two irritants, one mainly in terms of how the situation is in Pakistan, where there is problem of governance, where there is certain amount of support that is being given to some terrorist groups, and where the internal situation is not very good. And therefore, it can have a fallout in terms of how these things impact India.
Furthermore, he said that China, with its rising economy as well as military, is also one of the reasons of worries that lie with India.
We have a rising China, both economically and militarily. Although we have CBMs on place, although we have a very stable border, yet we have a border dispute. And therefore, the intentions need to be looked at along with this additional capability that is coming up. That impacts the way we will task our army and the roles that we will give to it so that it can do the task that the nation wants.
Chinese troops coming into the northern parts of Kashmir. This is the Gilgit-Baltistan region where China has been busy building a highway to link up with Pakistan's rail network to Pakistani ports on the Arabian Sea. So far, Pakistan has denied the reports, claiming that only a humanitarian team from China has come to aid with the flood assistance. So far, India has claimed that at least 1,000 Chinese troops are in the area. So we start with Pakistan. The Pakistanis are always in need of an external power patron. Their preferred patron is, of course, the United States, but the Pakistanis cannot always depend on the U.S., especially when the U.S. has to balance between the Indians and the Pakistanis, which often makes Pakistan feel betrayed in that relationship. So the Pakistanis are always looking for backup from the Chinese and are more than happy to have China reinforce an overland route through Pakistan that could help with military assistance. Then you have China. China and India have been in a very rough diplomatic patch over the past several weeks because China has refused a visa to a senior Indian general on the grounds that his command covers the Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir region. In Kashmir itself, China is looking, of course, to fortify its transit lines for its resource allocation needs. An energy-hungry China needs to protect those transit lines, and the military, of course, plays a big part in that. Also in China, we're seeing a trend where the military is playing a much bigger role in politics. So Chinese naval expansion in the Arabian Sea is, of course, going to drive Indian naval expansion. And so the Chinese would have an interest in keeping India's military focus on Kashmir and on the Sino-Indian border, as well as on Pakistan, instead of focused on building and modernizing the Indian Navy, which may run counter and interference with Chinese naval expansion plans. Finally, you have India. India feels extremely military encircled by China as China is looking to secure these transit routes and expand into the Indian Ocean basin. But they're also looking at the prospect of China fortifying its defense relationship with Pakistan and having a more direct route to military reinforce the Pakistanis. So that's a common ground for the Indians and the U.S. To cooperate on, which is the subject of discussion right now. Likewise, Pakistan is going to be looking for Chinese reinforcement as much as possible as the U.S. is preparing for a policy shift in Afghanistan. The United States, meanwhile, is going to try to keep Pakistan focused on the fight in Afghanistan and off Kashmir and off India, but that's going to be all the more troublesome as these Kashmir tensions escalate more and more. So what we want to look for now is any shifts in the Indian military disposition in the region. We'll also want to keep an eye on any Indian movements toward Tibet. Tibet is a traditional card that India plays whenever it needs to signal to Beijing to back off, and this is certainly a region where India needs to send that signal to the Chinese.
No, forget it. It's high time to shut up. Don't preach and teach China. I'm sorry, because I'm being not diplomatic in using my language.
Well, it's quite interesting, isn't it?
But I feel very strongly about it.
Yes, and it clearly makes you angry.
We don't have any soldier abroad. We're not killing anyone. Look what the way they are doing in the world today, right? So, China is threatening. China's new build-up is not in China's interest. Who knows China better? China itself knows it better. China is not a member of any military alliance. Look, being a superpower, it is building up all kinds of alliances in the world today. For the defense of the territory of the United States? Right. Don't tell us anyway. It's U.S. sovereign right to do whatever they deem good for them. But don't tell us what is good for China. Thank you very much. Our military capability is exclusively for the self-defense, to make sure to deter those who dare to harm China.